Welcome to Helping Teachers Thrive. I'm excited to introduce our guest for today's episode, Dan Wise, who is the Director of Teaching Kent and accredited teaching trainer provider. With a partnership encompassing over 100 schools across Kent, Teaching Kent offers both salaried and unsalaried school direct training placements, as well as teaching apprenticeships at primary and secondary levels. Dan's commitment to nurturing the next generation of educators is evident through his leadership and the comprehensive support provided to trainees. Today we'll dive into Dan's journey in education, the mission of Teaching Kent, and his insights on effective teacher training. Dan, welcome to Helping Teachers Thrive.
Hi, thanks for having me on. Gives me something to do in the evenings, I suppose. You know, teachers don't have much to do, so...
Well...
we all finish work at 3, don't we? So it's...
No, yeah, of course we do, yeah. So can you just give us some information on your teaching journey and your mission going forwards now with Teaching Kent?
Wow, my teaching journey's quite a long one, I suppose. So I've been teaching for over 20 years, and I trained as a physics teacher originally, and then through all sorts of strange twists and turns became a head of music for about 15 years, and then moved up into leadership, up to deputy head, and then started this teacher training. I basically felt that the trainees in our schools weren't being particularly well looked after. The courses they were on weren't always great. The support wasn't always there when we needed it, and we thought, actually, let's try and get a bit more control over this. And at the same time, I could see the numbers of training teachers dwindling, and we needed to get a grasp of our recruitment. So that's what we did, and we started with 7 trainees in our first year and 6 schools, and now we're actually well over 200 schools now. We've got over 240 trainees across London, Kent and Sussex, and next year's looking to be well in excess of that as well. So it's grown and seems to just keep organically growing.
Wow, that's fantastic. How long's Teaching Kent been running for?
About 9 years in.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, we've gone from me in an office and a computer to a team of 10 now, plus all the people at the, so we're a lead partner, and at the provider, who's Test Institute, there are a whole load of people up there as well.
So with your experience in teaching and everything you've seen with teacher training that was out there and is currently out there, what are the biggest misconceptions about teacher training?
Yeah.
What is the reality, basically?
There are a lot of misconceptions. We run quite a lot of recruitment events. So last night I was at Sandwich Technology School down on the coast, because we're trying to help our coastal schools to attract local talent. And the questions that we come across are pretty similar. So one of the things that's a misconception is that only recent graduates can train. So people don't think that people come to teaching, they think they just came straight out of university and go straight into teaching. But actually, the wealth of experience in the world coming into teaching is great. One of his trainees this year is 62 and brings amazing things and experience working in some really deprived communities as a teaching assistant, and now can bring something back as a teacher. So yeah, that's a common misconception. Teacher training being unpaid and unfunded. People think that there's no money available, but actually the bursaries are massively generous. For computing and physics and maths at secondary level, it's £29,000 next year. It's a huge amount of money. And also there's now several paid routes in. So you don't have to leave your school to train. That's another misconception. They think you have to go to another school, but we work with schools who have got their own support staff they want to develop as well. The other thing that's not so much a misconception now is that, to start with, there's a lot of this where they thought you had to go to a university to train, and so the idea of training in a school where a school was leading it was quite a strange concept. But now actually most teacher training is schools-based, skit-based training rather than university-based training. So it's really popular. Schools like it, we want to grow our own, so it seems the logical thing that would evolve.
And I feel that teachers will get way more experience being in school training, on the job, day in, day out, rather than... I mean, I did a PGCE, so I was at university for most of the time and had my 2 placements. But being able to learn on the job, I would have definitely loved to have done that. I would have picked that over a PGCE and just been in it every single day and experiencing those situations with other teachers and colleagues and learning from them. It's huge.
Yeah, and I did a PGCE as well, traditional PGCE physics route that you'd expect, and I can see both sides. I can see what the advantages are at both sides, but certainly what our roots bring is that you are in school from day one. You're Sir or Miss from day one. You build better relationships with your school because you are there straight away. You're immersed in it. You're beside those expert colleagues that you want to, that you want to learn from, and they're invested in you. So it's trainees report feeling like a part of the staff, which is really important.
So what have you seen your trainees struggle with the most? What are the biggest challenges that they have had to go through or are dealing with currently?
That's a really interesting question, because it's a bit different for everyone. One of the biggest barriers that people face is themselves. Teaching is unlike many careers. You get a lot of feedback, both formal from people that know what they're saying, and lots of little people that don't know what they're talking about necessarily, but might behave to give you feedback. And people in other industries are taught to defend themselves. So if you're in sales or marketing and your figures aren't right and your boss challenges you, you are kind of trained to say no, but it was because of this and because of that. In teaching, we don't do that. We listen and we take on board that feedback. And trainees that can't put that aside, they can't stop being defensive. They can't stop protecting themselves and genuinely open up. They struggle. So we have to have quite tough conversations with people about the fact that it might not be their academics that's letting them down. It might be their willingness and their openness to improve. And the other big one's organisation. There's a lot to do. I mean, you remember your teacher training, there is a lot to do. And although we help people massively with that, it's a different level of organisation. You might think working in retail is going to prepare you for it, or working, in a different job, but it's an intense thing. It's one of those funny things that with teaching is that during the day, the actual bit that you do in front of the children, the teaching, is just a small part of what actually is going on. It's an iceberg. The tip is the teaching, and underneath is all the planning, marking, assessing, developing yourself, reading the theory, learning how your tutor works, making sure that the mentor knows what they're doing. All of that stuff goes on in the background and in the rest of the time. So being organised is a really big hurdle for trainees to come under as well.
And I guess it's also quite shocking to them when they first step foot in the classroom that they're not just teachers, really. They're also first aiders and social workers and judges and investigators. There's a whole load of hats that they're wearing.
Yeah.
At any one time in a lesson.
Yeah, and if a bee flies in the window, yes. Forget your lesson plan. All of that, and those kind of that range of skills that you need to be a teacher are really wide. I saw some research not long ago where it said the average person working in an office would probably have 30 to 35 human interactions a day, and teachers have in excess of 1,500 human interactions, because we're constantly feeding back to large groups and individuals, and we have to look at what the groups are and aren't doing, what the individuals are and aren't doing, as well as thinking of our plan and thinking of our colleagues and the children's parents and stakeholders. Lot to consider being a teacher, and that can be a shock to people as well, but also it's the best and worst and most terrible and wonderful job in the world, isn't it? So there's nothing like it. No
two days are ever the same, no two lessons are ever the same. Which is great, to be fair. It keeps you on your toes, and if you like to be adaptable, then it's perfect for you as an individual. If you love to adapt to a situation, you love trying new things out and meeting different people, and you like having different situations, it suits you to a T. But it's also exhausting because of all those interactions. It is mentally and physically exhausting.
Yeah.
So what sort of strategies do you or Teaching Kent provide to the trainees?
It's a really hard one. We actually do quite a bit of work on this, even from the point of inducting trainees. We talk about how to look after themselves. It's an interesting thing. Humans are particularly bad at it. Anthropologically speaking, when humans evolved and learnt to be successful, they learnt to find things, kill things, eat things, look after themselves, but they soon learnt working in groups was really important, and actually putting others before ourselves is really important, because if you work as a group, you're going to be more successful. Teachers do that to the nth degree. They look after other people before themselves, and don't realise that they need to look after themselves like someone they're responsible for. Like they would if it were a relative or a child that was unwell. They have to manage themselves. They're useless to everyone unless they do that. So we do quite a bit of work on that, and how to do that, how to manage your time, how to be organised, how to get out of little habits like being a perfectionist. Some people pride themselves on, I'm a perfectionist. Try that in teaching, see how long you'll last. You have to learn that you can do things to the best of your ability, but it's completely okay to accept things when they're just good as you're going to get them, because it's an unfinishable job of teaching. You can always do more. And teachers are in it because they want to do well for people, so they're even worse at managing their own workload. Organisation, that's always a big thing for workload and well-being for trainees. We're doing a lot now on use of technology and use of AI to save time. We show trainees about how to, like when the assignments come up, how to use technology to cut your assignment time down, how to look at all the research using AI, how to use technology to help plan your lessons, how to use it to help organise yourselves, and allow time to talk about that as well, and share those ideas. There's a lot to fit into a curriculum every year, but if you give time to these things where people look after themselves, we save ourselves a lot of hassle at the end where they're exhausted. And we talk to them about stress as well. Stress is actually a very good thing. It's just knowing when you're overstressed. Being challenged is a great thing. It motivates us. Being under challenged, we're not motivated. We don't want to engage. But we have to know what our warning signs are, so that when we move into that period where we are actually getting to the point where we could become exhausted because we're over challenged, we're doing too much, recognising those signs. And I think with teachers, some are very good at that and know when to switch off, and others are terrible at it, and they make themselves ill. You would have met people where they have made themselves ill because of over worry, over work, because they're not good at spotting those signs. And then importantly, a bit like assessment for learning, you see something, you then do something about it that helps you, and all of that trainees need to learn how to do.
And I feel trainees also, because they want to try and build this positive, good reputation of themselves, they want to be seen that they're doing everything really, really well, and they're putting their hands up for all sorts of opportunities, that they don't want to miss anything. And I think I heard one of my trainees last term say to another trainee, "You've got to put school emails on your phone. You have to have access to it all the time. You can't miss anything." And I was like, whoa, don't do that at all. You don't need to. That's the last thing you want to do, because that affects your work-life balance massively, and that adds more stress.
Yeah, and that knowing when enough is a really hard thing for them to do. We also, there's a kind of category of trainees as well, which are quite highly performative trainees that feed off of good feedback. Like when Ofsted used to grade lessons, there were those teachers that are one junkies. They loved an outstanding, So you'd go in as a senior lead, you'd go and observe, and all they really want to know is what number they got. So teaching them to not fret about the things that don't really matter is a difficult lesson for them to learn as well. And all those trainees don't ask for help either, because they want to make it look great. What we always tell them is that we'll talk about you behind your backs, and they will find out anyway. So you just got to ask for help. If you need help, ask for it, and we're there to help.
And there wasn't any provision in terms of SCN training when I was a trainee. When I was doing my PGC, there was no compulsory time that we had to spend in an SCN provision. And I think currently now, correct me if I'm wrong, it's not compulsory, it's optional to spend time in SCN provision. So how do we help these trainee teachers that are coming in to increase their understanding, knowledge, the number of strategies that they can use to better support their students in their lessons who have specific needs, who may be struggling?
So there's a big push on SEND and ITT at the moment, and so our curriculum actually has 5 whole modules on SEND within the course, and all of our trainees go for at least 2 days to a special needs school as well. So they'll go to an SEND setting and see how specialist provisions work. Plus we have guest speakers who are specialists in special needs teaching, and will come deliver keynote speeches as well about working in those types of schools. So we actually do quite a lot of SEND, and we also, with this government's kind of push for an inclusive version of SEND as well. I'm really keen on kind of mainstream inclusion of trainees. Trainees more than ever have to be aware of how to address the special needs you're going to come across in your own school. But also, we do like the fact that some of our trainees, when they go to an SEND school, didn't realise they'd love it, and then end up working in those schools as well. So it's quite a nice surprise for some of them.
And having that experience is going to benefit them in the long run, and their students. And I've worked in an SEN school, so just being with those students, you just realise the love of learning that they have, and they really, really want to have that thirst for learning, and they love it. When you see that light bulb moment, it's a massive impact on their well-being, and they enjoy it so much. They're so motivated. So I can understand why they end up staying there and working there in the long run. I mean, I only didn't because I miss teaching PE too much, but I've learnt so much from my SEN experience, and I brought that into mainstream, and you just understand the kids a lot better. You spot the triggers a lot better. You know, strategies to help better support them in lessons. They are more calmer. So it's going to benefit them in the long run and their students going forwards, whichever school they go to.
And the range of SEND schools as well is really marked. When we've started working with the schools, you realise how different the SEND schools are. So there's so many different types of SEND school that the range of experiences that trainees have is quite varied. And then we have to have opportunity for them to discuss those things in our training sessions as well, so they can draw on each other's learning as well.
What would your top tips be to your trainees that are struggling currently with behaviour management in their classrooms? What would your go-to tips be for them?
Well, I worked in a secondary boys modern for 20 years in Chatham, and that was a fairly tough setting, and so you got very good at behaviour management. So we do quite a bit of it's the thing that kind of scares trainees to start with, particularly at secondary level. So we make sure we focus on behaviour management in term 1 and also during induction, just to give them some strategies. There's a few basic tips. One is nothing's going to work immediately. You probably have to train the children to your technique. So look for what works in your school around you that other people are actually using successfully, and use it, because there's safety in numbers and they've already seen it in another class, and they will then recognise it when you try to introduce it. If you're doing a behaviour technique that's completely different to the rest of the school, then you've got issues. Learn the school policy. If the school policy is that you refer children to on-call or to out of the classroom to another teacher, blooming well use it. Because if you don't, and you feel some need to keep them in the classroom until the very last minute when they've, picked up a chair or whatever, then you've got no one to blame but yourself, because you're not following the policy. The kids don't say, do you know what, Miss? I remember last lesson that you didn't follow the policy correctly, and that you won't ever actually on-call us, but you will threaten that you'll call for on-call, so we're going to be complete nightmare this lesson. They just know that you're not going to follow through with the school policy. So learn the school policy, and don't be afraid of using it, because it's there to protect you. So a really good friend of mine, a brilliant teacher, about 3 years into his teaching, came and see me and said, it's not this one class, not going well. What is happening? I just don't know what's going on. Come and see me. So I said, okay, I'll come and watch. It was really apparent. I stayed for a little while and said to him, fed back to him after the lesson. I said, really simply, who have you sent out? The school policy is to refer them to on-call to send them out, and they get a detention. And why haven't you done that? There were 6 kids in there. It wasn't all 30 like you think it is. There were 6 kids in there where they were a problem, 4 of which should have been sent out. I said, I feel so bad. I need to keep them in the classroom. I feel like it's my class, I've got to deal with the discipline. And I said that they know that. They know you're not going to do it. So next lesson, as soon as you can, as soon as it's right, get the names on the board, get them out. And they'll learn that you're going to follow through, you're going to follow the policy. And that's exactly what he did. And this is a really senior teacher. So if they're using it as a trainee, you follow the policy as well. And the final tip I'd probably give to do with behaviour is remember you're the adult. I don't mean that in a patronising way. I mean you're the adult that they may not have role models like you, so you need to present the behaviour that you want to see. Be calm. You will win eventually. Even if you get into a child who's arguing with you and you don't feel like you're winning at the time, and it takes you until break or lunch to get through, you will win. It's okay. Don't get drawn into making something big that needs to be. Be calm, treat the behaviour, not the child. Try to find out why you think the thing's happening. Is it something you're doing? Is it something about the child you didn't know that you need to support? And go back to being persistent. Whatever your systems that you're going to use, make sure that you use them over and over again.
That is huge, because even I see it in my mainstream school. I see staff not consistently applying the behaviour policy, not following through with things, and then the kids come to our lesson and it just creates issues in our lessons. So we're doing everything correct and we're following behaviour policy, and then we're looking like the bad guys.
Yeah.
And I even said to my students, look, I'm just doing my job, guys. This is the behaviour policy. This is what has to happen.
Yeah.
I'm not doing anything wrong, being fair and consistent. Just be honest with them so they know.
And they know. I mean, when I first started teaching, there was a great guy called Gordon who used to work teaching the mobile outside my classroom. And this class I had real trouble with, Year 9 class. They're all over the place. I looked through this class I was having real trouble with. I looked through the window one day, and he had them as a history teacher in the mobile classroom, the worst place you can imagine. And the children were all trying to find their school shoes. They were putting their ties on nice. They were lining up and getting ready. And it was real simple. Gordon had something that I hadn't mastered yet, which is that he had high expectations, and that was it. He wasn't going to allow anything other than his expectations to be met, and he was going to insist on it. If it was painful for everyone and it involved parents in it, he was going to insist on it. And the kids knew. So I had to change my ways, and I had to learn from Gordon and make sure that I did those things. And it does make a huge difference to how your classroom is run when they know it's your classroom.
Yes, mastering your classroom and having that presence and that confidence to make them aware that this is my classroom. Yeah, I am in command. I'm here to keep you safe and to help you learn.
Yeah.
So you have to have those high expectations so that the kids know where you stand. And to be fair, they will meet you at those expectations, because they'll get to know you. They'll know that you're not going to let things slide. They know you're a stickler for the rules, but you're fair and consistent. And they'll meet you eventually. It'll take time, but they'll get there.
Absolutely.
So how do you see teacher training evolving in the coming years?
Yeah, that's a really difficult question, so thanks for that. I suspect that so there's a massive teacher recruitment crisis at the moment. You know, we're not going to be told quite how bad it is, but if you work in my position, you know that schools are screaming out for high quality people to come and work as teachers. And the easier it can make it for the government can make it for people like us to find those people and persuade people to come into teaching, the better. So I think that there will be hopefully some help funding wise to help us promote what we do and what other providers do. I suspect technology will come into teacher training a lot more over the next few years to reduce the paperwork. Famously, teacher training's got lots of paperwork, but we try and minimise it more and more. And it takes quite a brave IT provider to be the one that says we're not doing that. So, for instance, we don't have a portfolio for our trainees. We dropped that years ago, about 8 years ago, and we moved to kind of ongoing assessment. So you don't have to, you know, you probably your PGCE file where you had to get all the evidence together in a lever arch file that no one cares about. And it's a nonsense, you know. You say to your mentor at the end of the year, could you write me an email to say that I dealt with that parent really well, thank you, so I can fulfil and be or whatever it is. So we don't do that. And I think that will come into it more and more, how teachers will be trained to use technology to reduce their workload, and the actual expectations of paperwork surrounding what a teacher does on pedagogy, very fixated on theories, research, and that's great, you know, it does inform what we do, but the practical classroom bit is the bit that matters. If someone can do it in the classroom and understands what they're doing, so I think that will change. I think apprenticeships will really blossom. So we already do the postgraduate teaching apprenticeship. I think that the schools will start to realise the funding is often far better than it is on the schools direct salaried or ITT employment, as it's called now, route. And so lots of our schools don't realise they're £9,000 better off often using the apprenticeship route. So we're constantly communicating that to schools, but it's quite hard to always get that out there. But more and more providers are starting to do apprenticeships, so I think that will really be much more commonplace where people are teaching on the job. Hopefully the government will keep making tweaks to those apprenticeships so that plumbers and teachers, surprise, aren't the same. So the apprenticeships need to be tweaked for teachers so that they actually work for teachers. And this government's been really good in tweaking some of the rules, and it needs to go further. So it needs to start doing things that make some of the red tape surrounding apprenticeships a little bit less daunting for providers. And I think that the other thing that's going to probably change in teacher training is that this move towards schools-based training that we've got now will just accelerate. It will keep going up, so that the universities are already struggling to hold their head above water with training and the numbers shifting. I think that will continue because I think schools like to train people themselves. It's just if they can find enough numbers, basically.
Yes, no, we do. You're right. We like to train people ourselves. We like to keep them in house and then offer them a job at the end of the year. So we like to breed our own, so to speak.
Yeah,
because they know how things run.
And it makes more, you know, you've got someone in from the start of the course, start of the year, and you're training them your way, and they're there more, so that naturally they're going to be better. And lots of our trainees are also people that worked in the school previously as a teaching assistant, and so they've stayed in the school to become a teacher, and, you know, they're going to be wholesale grateful for the fact that you supported them as a school, so they'll stay, and that's what we want. We want people that are in the profession for the long run and that want to be there and want to work in our schools for not just 2 years. You want them to stay for a career.
Yes, and unfortunately I don't know what numbers are now, but there are teachers that are leaving the profession
so I saw
within the first 5 years, or is it first 2 years of training?
Well, so it's around 45,000 teachers, I think, in the last round left, and then the recruitment numbers are well below that. The government's missed its recruitment figures, particularly at secondary, for a very long time in lots of subjects. So that now catches up. And one of the problems we have as a lead partner for TES Institute is where schools would love to take a maths trainee, they would love to take a chemistry trainee, but they say to us, we actually don't have qualified teachers in that department who can mentor that teacher. So we're now and then think about that. So I was as a science teacher for quite a while. If you're in a science department and there are 10 teachers and only 2 of them are qualified, you've got a lot of weight on your shoulders supporting the other teachers in that department anyway. So then on top of that, to say, plus you're going to have 2 trainees, you'll probably say, no, my department will collapse if you do that. So that's a hard thing for us to do, to try and keep things as simple as possible for schools, to make it so that the training doesn't put too much burden on the school. And I think we all saw at the start of the year how the last government got that wrong. They put this requirement on providers to put 20 hours of training in place for mentors. And it was, I mean, the strain. You had people there that had mentored for multiple years, and with us, and with really good results, excellent mentoring and coaching skills, being told you've got to do 20 hours of training. Or they'd work with another provider and then come over to us. So rather than us do pragmatic, sensible, bespoke training to get them into our course so that they understood how we work, they had to do 20 hours of training. So we just made training 20 hours. Luckily, the new government came in and got rid of that requirement. You know, said we still got to train them really well, and we do. We have a course for them as appropriate, but that they can trust the providers to work out what's needed. So you can imagine at the start of the year, trying to persuade people to be mentors is hard anyway, and then trying to persuade them and say, oh, plus you've got to do 20 hours of training was a challenge, should we say.
Yeah, that was me before Christmas. Fun. I was like, oh, really? I've mentored a number of trainees, and now I've got to do 20 hours. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Where am I going to find these 20 hours? That's the issue.
So we're really relieved when we got that announcement. But that was the ITT market review that was published, and following on from the Carter review. And it was one of the many recommendations, but it did not make I think you have got to listen to the people on the ground doing the training that are working with the trainees and the mentors, and listen really carefully about, okay, what do you need? Not like, this is what we think you should all do, but okay, what do you need?
You sort of just remind me of something there, actually. So do you think that teachers are trusted enough anymore? Like, I get the feeling that sometimes we're not trusted in terms of knowing what's best for our students and knowing that we can be creative in a lesson and still get the results that we need to get, or the government's not trusting teachers to do their job and do it correctly.
We're getting a bit conspiracy theory now, right? And that's not a bad thing. So I mean, there are kind of parts of the educational academic world that feel that the whole deprofessionalisation of teaching is done on purpose by governments, because if you take away the autonomy of the profession and therefore you replace it with facilitation rather than professional teachers that are more than capable of making their own decisions and are trained as a profession to be able to do so for the right thing for their pupils. Actually, you can replace them with facilitators, and they're cheap, and also they're more malleable. So you get these ideas where people get concerned that, well, all these PowerPoints are being provided to me, but I just have to follow this because that's what's standardised within our trust. We all have to do that, and there's no scope for me to change those and I'm replaceable. Well, you can have cheaper people if you do that. So, and it does make sense. I mean, strategically thinking, it actually makes sense, because it's a clever thing to do, because teachers are hard to find. In the more challenging your school is, the more challenging the context. Coastal schools, socioeconomically deprived areas, all of those things mean that the extra difficulties in recruitment, and so you might find it really hard to find qualified teachers, especially with that many leaving each year. So what do? Well, actually, we make it so someone can facilitate learning rather than a teacher. So I don't think it's necessarily a we don't trust you thing. I think it is more a strategic capacity thing, so that if you do have to replace with teachers that aren't qualified, then you can. But you can easily get into kind of the conspiracy side where you start thinking, oh no, it's because they don't trust us. But and you kind of have to set like a bottom benchmark as well. If you're leading education, you've got to set this kind of bottom, this is where we're starting from. So everyone has got to follow a basic curriculum, has got to follow the basic expectations for children. That's probably not controlling things, that's just saying this is what we minimally recommend children should be able to do. And it's how far a trust or a school interprets that and then puts their own stamp on it, and how much kind of weight they give to teachers having their own legitimacy over them being professionals. Bet you wish you never asked now.
No, to be fair, you've sort of opened my mind to it a little bit, because you're right. It does make sense in that looking at it in that perspective. To be fair, and I suppose it also ensures consistency across what's being taught and how things are being done. And there's nothing really wrong with that, because kids thrive off of consistency. They need that consistent routine, consistent understanding of exactly what's happening when in lesson and how things are structured and laid out in lesson. So looking from that perspective, it does make sense.
It's benefits and there's disadvantages. I mean, I think the frustration is, if you are a qualified teacher and you've got many years of experience, being told how you're going to teach all your lessons when you know that you've got a fairly good idea there's a better way of doing it, is very frustrating. So it's that balance of making sure that you do allow professionals. I think quite nice, a lot of schools now will give the benchmark. This is the stuff we want delivered, but if you as a teacher want to take that further, you've got a different way of doing it, then that's fine. It depends how much freedom you're allowed.
Just before I let you go, Dan, if I interviewed a couple of your trainees on my podcast, what would they say about teaching Kent?
Well, I'd love to set that up.
Yes,
I've got
please.
a lot of trainees, so we can get a couple of trainees to come and meet with you. I don't know. I think they're all so different, and their experiences are very different. There are some. One of the things I hope they would say is that they're looked after. So I set this up because I wanted to make sure that when people trained, if there was an issue, it was dealt with quickly. So we kind of have a same day, next day policy. We try and deal with things as quickly as we can. Nothing worse than being a trainee in a school and you raise an issue and nothing's done for weeks. Awful feeling. And often a lot more damage is done by then as well. And I hope they feel that all the support's available. We genuinely care. We want to. We've got all sorts of things like occupational health, and we've got counselling. We've got coaching, mentoring. We've got lead mentor teams to support them. If they ask for help, we like to think that we can do it. So I'd hope they'd say that.
So if there are any unqualified teachers listening to this, say, how can they get in touch with you? How can they look into Teaching Kent and basically register and have a word with you about what they're going to do going forwards?
Our website's craftily named as teachingkent.co.uk, so everything's there. There's a video of me talking all about it. They can just go and visit our website, and then I have 3 professional stalkers whose job it is to support people from the website through to the classroom. So they make sure that no one gets left behind, because we make sure that anyone that could train does get the opportunity to have their interview. And that is really important as well. And this year we've had something like 1,600 applications so far, so we've got a lot of people that contact us, and every single one of those will have a response, and then will lead through to interview if they're eligible.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Dan, for your expertise and for your support and the hard work that you put in for your trainees, and to help us retain more teachers and get more teachers teaching, and also be passionate about their careers and enjoy it and love teaching. So thank you so much for everything that you do with Teaching Kent. We really appreciate it. Thank you
for giving everyone a voice. I think these things are really important to give the education debate. It would be really interesting to do a format. We have multiple people on one of your podcasts as well.
Yes.
That would be really good. A few people talk about various aspects of teacher training, and I think it's also a great thing where people that are a bit lost in the profession have got someone that can come and listen to some great advice. Some of the people you've had on are fantastic, and have offered some really good supportive advice for people in the profession.